Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our budget committee. We are now promoting people from the committee. Just give us a second. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Hurst, could you please take roll call?
Absolutely. President Smith-Folds,
Good evening, everyone. Present.
Clerk Gonzalez-Ford,
Good evening, President.
Dr. Moses,
Present.
Dr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Costa-Papaskas,
Present.
Ms. Sigler. I do know that I saw her. She is online. Ms. Payne,
Present via Zoom.
Ms. Forrest, Mr. Flashman,
Present on Zoom.
Mr. Mansing,
Present.
Dr. Gibbons,
Present.
Ms. Vega,
Present.
Mr. Ortiz,
Present online.
Mr. Mitchell,
Present.
Ms. Bond,
Present.
Ms. Chamberlain,
Present.
Mr. Ryan.
Present.
I think I called Dr.
Michelle Melford is a UTR representative.
Ms. Melford.
Present.
Thank you.
Anyone we did not call? Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is a big committee. Okay, wonderful. Let's move to land and body acknowledgement. First, the land acknowledgement. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Kark, and Ohlone peoples, and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. President Simples, would you mind reading our body recognition?
Absolutely. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of their labor survivors over the centuries to today, of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States.
Thank you so much, President.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we're gonna move to public comment. The public has the ability to make public comment at the beginning of the meeting, also after each action or discussion item, and we have a couple today. But right now, the public has 2 minutes. You're able to, if you would like to make public comment on Zoom, just have to raise your hand, and we'll recognize you. If you are here in the room and you would like to make public comment now, okay, thank you. We have one person, so I'm not gonna bore you with the speech. Thank you so much. But if there's anyone online who would like to make public comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, I don't see any public comments, so we'll move on. The purpose of the committee is to look at each department collaboratively with the union partners and community partners to find savings in the budget. The outcome will be a collaborative budget that reflects distinct priorities and fiscal responsibility and accountability. We also get reports before each period where the full board gets reports, for example, the first interim in December, and we review how the budget is going. Anything you'd like to add, President?
No.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, we're gonna now move to item 3 on our agenda, which is a presentation from Teaching and Learning. Dr. Hurst, I'll pass it to you to introduce the item.
Yes, now I'd like to introduce our Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Costa-Papaskas.
Amazing, thank you so much. We just have to present. Amazing, thank you all. Excited to have our team here to present programs that exist within the Teaching and Learning Department. We already went through our recognitions, so I'll pass through that. So our agenda tonight is to review the programs that are listed above. We're going to start off by taking a look at understanding the program and the data supporting the program for our International Baccalaureate IB program, for our dual language immersion program, for our K-8 schools program, Vista Virtual Academy program, and then we'll take a moment to review the budgeting tool that Dr. Moses has in front of us today as well, and then take some time to review the data that we present today to do scoring. Just so you know, we will have an opportunity to ask question after every program. And unless there's any edits that we want to see on the agenda, I'll go ahead and get us started.
If you could just hold on 1 second.
Sure.
We're seeing your email.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
yeah.
We can see the presentation here, but not on the Zoom.
Have to share.
You're doing a good job reading your emails.
Okay, are we good now?
We are good now. Thank you so much. So we are going to kick it off with our IB program, and today presenting for us is Dr. Chilcott. So I'll kick it over to him. He is present on Zoom.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the International Baccalaureate or IB program tonight. Next slide, please. I'm not seeing it here. It hasn't moved. Did it move? Okay, there we go. Thank you. The IB develops inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through education that builds intercultural understanding and respect. So that's the vision of the IB program in West Contra Costa. It is a program that spans 3 schools and 3 distinct programs. So at Pinole Valley High School, we have the diploma program. And I might switch back between saying diploma program and DP. If I say MYP, I'm referring to the middle years program. Pinole Middle, which is paused for 24-25 due to some budgetary restraints, has the middle years program. West County Mandarin has the primary years program and the middle years program. Next slide, please. Here is a more in-depth description of the 3 different programs. So these 3 different programs have some overlap, but they're intended for different ages of students. So the primary years program is about developing skills as lifelong learners. The middle years program continues as the PYP and adds a framework for connecting their studies and the broader world. And then the diploma program extends student knowledge and offers the ability to graduate with college credit and an IB diploma. And so these are how the 3 different programs fit together across our district. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 schools in the 1 IB continuum. If you look at the way the arrows are, they talk about how the different schools and the different programs fit together. For instance, on the left column, if you're a student attending West County Mandarin, you go through the primary years program, and then the middle years program is the older elementary grades and into the middle school level grades. Or you could have shifted, right now, again, we're paused at Pinole Middle, but you could have shifted over to Pinole Middle and attended the middle years program there. And then all of these are intended to funnel into the middle years program at Pinole Valley High School, which then leads to the diploma program. So this is the way the continuum works across the schools. It was intended, again, to have students matriculating from one program in one school to another, and in the end leading to the diploma program and students graduating with both college credit and the IB diploma. Next slide, please. So the benefits to the schools and districts. So students leave IB more college ready, and we'll have a couple of testimonials that I'll speak to later in the slide presentation or in the presentation. Um, about that, there's greater staff collaboration, and we're attracting and retaining pupils to Pinole Valley who want to participate in the program. So these were really the main benefits of IB as it was designed for West Contra Costa. Next slide, please. And there are a number of program strengths. I'm not going to read every bullet. There's a number of bullets on here because there's a number of strengths within the program. But I will highlight that there's more honors course offerings within IB than there was previously. And there's a higher exam pass rate than the AP that we have in our other schools, which leads to more students graduating with college credit. So these are strong benefits of the IB program. Next slide, please. In addition, when we talk about alignment, the IB aligns to West Contra Costa's graduation or grad profile pretty directly. So while the IB learner attributes in the graduate profile are not word for word, the alignment is apparent. And IB helps West Contra Costa graduates matriculate as self-directed learners, responsible world citizens, innovative thinkers, skilled communicators, effective collaborators, and content masters, which obviously are the facets of the WCCUSD graduate profile. Next slide, please. And also the IB approaches to teaching and learning. The IB approaches to learning skills are grounded in the belief that learning how to learn is fundamental to a student's life in and out of school context. So I want to be clear, IB is a program leading to college credit and greater readiness for college, and that's the ultimate goal. But really it's teaching students, or helping students learn how to learn. It's a learning style, it's a pedagogical style that is throughout all of the grades and all of the programs and all of the schools that I'm highlighting today. And you can see the 21st century skills on the right: communication, social collaboration, self-management, research, thinking. These are what industry leaders highlight as the skills that they want to see students matriculated from high school, graduated from high school, able to engage in. And this is why IB students that go through the program are stating that they're more ready for college once they get there, having gone through the IB program. Next slide, please. The IB standards and practice also contribute to the achievement of most elements of the strategic plan. IB, all of this to say, IB is highly aligned with the goals of the district. So you can see the standards and practice on the left and the WCCUSD strategic plan elements on the right. There's a high level of alignment between the goals of the district and the IB program overall. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Mandarin. The vision for Mandarin: at West County Mandarin School, we are committed to equity and have high standards for the growth and success of all students. Mandarin began as an elementary school that was implementing IB and has expanded to the middle grades, meaning middle school grades, and the middle years program at their site. They've been highly effective at integrating the teaching practices of the International Baccalaureate into their day-to-day practice, and it is for all of their students. Next slide, please. Some key, this is the only public Mandarin IB school in the state. You don't have to know any Mandarin, does not need to be known to attend, and there's a strong focus within the school of recruiting diverse families. Next slide, please. Here's some achievement data for Mandarin for the last couple of years. And you can see that there's been growth in both their math and their ELA achievement over those years. Also, their EL reclassification rates are quite high. West County Mandarin is the only school in the district to perform at the highest level in the English Learner Progress Indicator on the California dashboard. And you'll be hearing about Mandarin as well in the dual language immersion presentation that is going to be following this one. So just to be clear, The IB program and the DLI program, while there's some overlap with their goals and some of the strategies they're using, those are two distinct programs, which is why you'll be hearing about them separately today. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to pivot to Pinole Valley High School. This is the enrollment data from 24-25. So you can see that 624 juniors and seniors are involved in IB courses. 326 are in one or more IB courses. And there are 40 that are pursuing the full IB diploma. If you look, it has been growing year over year, and we hope to be able to continue supporting this program and growing the number of IB full diploma graduates from our district. Next slide. One question that comes up a lot are the demographics of the International Baccalaureate program. And you can see here the breakdown. There's 624, as I stated previously, juniors and seniors that are in the IB program, of which 5% are special education, 504 makes up about 3%, and 4% are EOD. In addition, the overall population of Pinole Valley has about 14.5% African American students and 9.82% of the IB program are African American students. And so just to be clear and transparent, that is an area of work that we need to do. That's not a huge disparity, but it is an area to make the demographics of those students that are involved in the IB program correspond with the overall percentages of the population. And I'm also going to speak to the special education and the ELD programs. This is one of the limitations of our current program. With the traditional 6-period day, it is hard. Those students have very impacted schedules, and that's what leads to the lower percentages for those particular subgroups within our system. So we would hope that if we support IB, that we'll be able to support an expanded schedule at some point in the future, because it would really facilitate being able to be more equitable in who is in the International Baccalaureate program and get more students graduating with the IB diploma. Next slide, please. This is just the number of students that are in each class over the last 3 years in the IB program. So you can see a trend of growth of the numbers of students that are involved in IB. Next slide, please. This is the, and I apologize for the missing data in the middle. We will have that filled in quickly, but the turnaround on this particular presentation meant we couldn't pull that data and fill it out. But what you do see there is both the number of students, the number of students that are passing the exam is quite higher for IB. So again, I want to reiterate that the number of students that are involved in honors and higher level coursework in the IB program is higher than it was previous to IB being implemented at Pinole Valley High School. And the number of students that are getting college credit by passing those exams is higher with the IB than it was for AP. Next slide, please. And here, we should just be proud of the work that West Contra Costa students have been doing. We have students admitted to UCs, 3 early admissions to Ivy League universities. This is 2023, Brown, Cornell, and Dartmouth. And there were some last year as well, which we'll add to our information on the slides. Many students left West Contra Costa with college credits, including 4 starting university with 30 credits, which is amazing. We have, and then you can see here, here's a Gates Scholarship and a Questbridge finalist, and there were other scholarships beyond that that IB helped facilitate West Contra Costa students winning. Next slide, please. And here's some testimonials. I'll just pause here. You don't need to hear my voice because they're written right there, but you will see students that are involved in IB and their parents and just how excited they are about what their students experience in IB. I will highlight the one on the bottom left. You changed the trajectory of our son's academic life. That is just such a strong statement of a family that has really benefited from the International Baccalaureate program. And with that, I can take any questions on IB if now is the time.
Are we doing questions on each program, or do you want to do them at the end?
I think it makes sense to pause and do questions here for IB, so they're specific to the program, and then we'll score all together at the end.
Got it, okay. Why don't we then open it up for committee members? Does anyone have any questions? I see Kim Chamberlain, raise her hand. Ms. Chamberlain, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm curious, what course areas, work areas are they getting their college credits in? Are there any specific areas such as, like the foreign languages, science? Where are they going with this? How is this, challenging them beyond what AP is, or? And I'm really curious if some of these courses that they're getting college credit in aren't coming from Contra Costa and the dual enrollment classes that are available. And how are they compared to other school sites with the dual enrollment, such as Richmond High and De Anza?
That's an excellent question about the comparison between other schools with the dual enrollment. But I would have to look that up. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. So we'll definitely dig into that to get you that information. I can say that no, this is not including the dual enrollment with the IB credits that are earned. This is specifically around the IB credits that are earned through that program. In terms of the courses, I would have to look to get the full breakdown of where the college credit was earned. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it cuts across all the subjects that you mentioned. We're talking about some students in math. It was a handful in language, but those were difficult. So again, it was a handful of those. I know social studies was there and ELA as well. But again, we can get firmer numbers on that, but it really cut across. And as you're bringing up AP, it really aligned somewhat with the traditional coursework, not coursework, but the content areas that we would have been giving credit for AP. But again, the pass rates, because of the more in-depth instruction, the way that it goes from, or it articulates throughout the 4 years that they're at Pinole Valley, the pass rates are higher than they were for AP.
And we haven't had the Mandarin school go further yet, considering the fact that they're only to 7th grade at this point. So
Once the
sorry, so I'm curious on the challenges of moving from one school to another, that we're having with transfers in the district and having the availability for students to transfer in, considering the financial challenges that we're having at this point in time. Is this going to be an issue continuing this program on from Mandarin into Pinole Valley? And is it logical really to keep Pinole Middle School in that, with it being a K-8, with Mandarin being a K-8?
No, that's an excellent question, and that's why on the spreadsheet that we did to articulate the budgets, I split them out as 3 distinct programs, is because that they do need to be considered in relation to each other, but separately. In terms of Mandarin matriculating to Pinole Valley, yes, there's things that have to be planned. We would have to decide what Mandarin instruction is going to exist at Pinole Valley, and we're not there yet, as you stated. But these are considerations that will have to be solved over time. But I think they're currently up to 7th grade this year, and so that would not be really an issue until we got to them being juniors, maybe a handful of sophomores. So it's a few years out, but yes, there's some things that would have to be planned around for sure. And I couldn't speak to costs or whether it be cost neutral because I frankly don't know.
But my understanding is that they have to start in 9th grade with the programming and the thought process. Isn't that still true? So they would need to be into Pinole Valley in 9th grade. So we're actually only
Correct.
2 years out in planning.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, but we don't get impacted with fundamental changes in what they'll be experiencing at Pinole Valley until the older grades. That's what I was trying to say, is they will fold into the MYP program at Pinole without too much issue in the first couple of years, the 9th and 10th grade years at Pinole Valley. After that, there would have to be considerations for just their ability, their facility with language, because they will be basically fluent in Mandarin at that point, and therefore, what are we going to be able to offer up in Pinole Valley? So that needs to be determined for the older grades, but it is a few years out. Middle years program, 9th and 10th, not really an issue at this point.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Okay, well, Dr. Chilcott, thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple questions. What is the cost of us having the program?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. This is a great opportunity for me to kind of set the expectations for this evening. So if you're on the committee, you have a form, you have a set of forms in front of you. The cost of the IB program outside of the FTE of the teachers teaching the program is $628,000 annually. That cost covers administrative fees, licensing fees, testing fees. So that amount is in addition to the cost of instructors to teach the program. With the reality being that if there were a reduction to this program, the teachers would still need to teach something, right? And so we would not necessarily be eliminating teachers, but if we did make a shift in this program, that wouldn't impact our FTE, I think is what I'd like to say. But I also want to set the tone that Interim Associate Superintendent Acosta Proskus' team is going to share with you 4 programs. Our hope is at the end of the night, we're going to use our purpose-based budgeting tool for committee members only to use the rating scales so that we can begin to collect some data on how you rate the programs in terms of the presentations that you're hearing this evening. And then it'll be up to the committee leads, Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy and President Smith-Folds and Superintendent Hurst, what we do with that information.
thank you. And then how are you gonna, well, when we get there, maybe you can explain this, but also
Yes.
the people online, how we're gonna do that.
Yes, the people online, if you're a committee member, you got a calendar invite, and on your calendar invite, there's a link to these forms that you can fill out virtually.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have any questions?
I may have to come back because I'm processing. Thank you for this sheet. Helps me.
And just to speak a little bit to what Dr. Moses just said about the money, that 600, I think it's 30 something, I can't quite remember the number. That is for all 3 programs. And so we can do a breakdown of the individual programs and how they add up to that as well. And as she stated, it will not really be much of a change in FTE, because the FTE that we're paying for the IB program are teaching courses that supplant our normal course of study, and therefore it's pretty much a one-to-one change. So what we're cutting is the supplementary stuff, as Dr. Moses mentioned.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Okay, well, why don't we move to the next program?
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Chilcott. So now we're
Thank
gonna
you.
a deep dive into dual language immersion, DLI. And presenting tonight for us is our ALMA director, Saul Orozco. And he's with us tonight virtually as well.
Good evening, committee members. We'll be presenting on the dual language immersion programs here at West Contra Costa Unified School District. Next slide.
Stop you just for 1 second, Mr. Orozco. We're having a hard time hearing you. Could you maybe speak up a bit?
Let me move things around. And is that better, or should I speak up? Does that work?
A little bit louder would be better.
Is it my acoustics? Hold on 1 second.
Thank you.
Can we turn the owl up?
We're trying to.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Is there a way to turn the owl up?
Can you
Just
hear me now?
a little better.
Yeah.
A little better. The louder, the better.
Let me try one more thing to see if it's all the way up on my end. I will speak up then.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So before we jump into the dual language immersion programs in our district, it's important to identify the differences in dual language immersion programs. You'll notice that there's 3 specific programs. One is called two-way, the other one is one-way, and the other one is transitional bilingual. and I will explain which each difference is and why. The two-way program really focuses on the majority of English-only students. However, these programs do and must maintain a 33% English learner component. Now, why is that important? Well, all DLI programs, including two-way programs, have that equity lens to support our most needy students in terms of English learners. Really connecting with our district vision in terms of 4 and 5, creating equitable anti-racist practices across our district, and really creating a space of ethical empathy between our students and community members, and then creating that instructional practice. So what better way to create that community by starting with the differences in languages, and then of course that leads to the differences in our cultures and making a beautiful community. The one way, its unique program dynamic includes a majority of English learners, and this is always around the 90% marker. Now they can have up to a 33% English only as well, but it's really an English almost all program. So at these school sites, everyone in these particular programs are English learner students. These one-way programs are difference between the transitional bilingual in one major way. So they have the same student population of English learner. However, the one-way English learner programs for English learners are K6. That means the span of your elementary career, right? Every single grade is a pathway. Transitional, however, is at that particular school site, you'll notice Chavez, Lincoln Coronado, that is not the fulfillment of the program. So potentially they can end at fifth, fourth, or if not sooner, depending on the particular school site program. So oftentimes there might be, depending on the year, a difference between early exit or late exit. Most of our programs are late exit models. And then one more note before we jump into the details, and this is also important, is we do have two major structures. So notice that we have Washington and West County Management are whole school models. That means every single student is participating in the school DLI program. The other models are strands. That means that there's separate pathways. That means depending on your school site, you can have 50% of your students participate in a DLI program, and the other percent participating in the English only program, depending on which school. But it is not a full school model. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is kind of maybe difficult to see. However, there are important in terms of numbers. And the reason why this is important is this is one of the first years we've actually tagged our DLI students in terms of being able to follow their trajectory. And there's some obvious items in terms of data. Of course, our full school models, our whole school models, West County and Washington have the most students. But that's because every single student is in that particular model. You'll also notice that some programs are smaller. Some programs do have multiple strands. And then I want to circle one particular school site, which is Helms. And the reason why we began to document Helms is because we started to tag students moving into those programs as well. So even though Helms does not have a DLI program, they're almost a new feeder school to our DLI students. Other middle schools include Stewart in terms of numbers and Korematsu in terms of students who we are continued to follow in terms of DLI growth, performance growth. Next slide, please. Now, our program is aligned with Common Core. So one major aspect to demonstrate how our programs align with the English ELA and math standards is in your DLI report cards, you'll notice that the report cards really align between ELA standards and your world language standards. In this case, you have your Spanish language arts standard and your Mandarin language arts standards. In Spanish particularly, they do specifically align. So the teacher is developing content or aligning curriculum. They're using these common standards of language to not only build on top of each other, to make connections, and to also be able to follow up on the next grade level, right? Because they they connect by grade as well. So they're building on top not only by student proficiency, but by grade level proficiency as well in both English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Uh, that type of system is helpful for staff, even when, for example, curriculum might not be specifically aligned or connected, because no curriculum is ever connected directly to another curriculum. However, standards are, and that is a fundamental process to assure that we have a pathway in terms uh, of an instructional pathway for support for teaching and for learning. Next slide, please. And this is a major reason to why our district has moved into the dual language immersion program process. I don't know, now this might be year 20 in terms of the first school. And we can see we now have 12 schools in the mix. As you can see, this graph shows that two-way programs and one-way programs tend to perform better than most programs nationally. Okay. One major insight here is that one of the programs that least support English learners is a pull-out system. Now, you'll notice that when you're pulling out a student, now they're not part of the community, they're isolated. These are things we really want to work against in terms of uh, planning how to support students specifically, how to create small group structures, how to support teachers in order to support their students in creating a welcoming environment versus putting them in the corner and saying, please learn on your own. In fact, it's the opposite here in terms, the longer we keep students in the program, the higher success we can see. Now, success, like any investment, does take time. And this is a 1st through 12th grade process here. Most of our data currently does exist up to the middle school range currently. So that's the goal, is to build that program out to see these same successes. And these connections really connect to now our vision, or district vision of 1, 2, and 3 that really tie into rigor, the effectiveness of communication and the state seal of biliteracy, and developing critical thinkers in terms of using multiple language. It's another part of your brain when you're talking about how to explain a math concept in a variety of languages or science concept in a variety of languages as well. Next slide. Now, Dr. Chilcott mentioned this particular data point in his portion, specifically with West County Mandarin. And this is the English Learner Progress Indicator shared by the state dashboard, oftentimes referred to as LP. Notice that we have district schools, and these are a little bit difficult to see, but I really wanted to highlight the DLI connections, right? So just off the back, we see that like our district, they're kind of scattered throughout. However, we definitely see some shining points in terms of what schools are being successful. And one might jump to the conclusion that only our two ways or one ways would be successful. However, that is not the case. So for example, we have a school that's transitional bilingual that's in green, and it's one of the most advanced schools there as well. So programs can show effective instructional practices and strong ELD programming and English only programming in DLI in transitional one-way and two-way models. Next slide, please. Now, reclassification is a major goal for our English learners. Now, we mentioned how English learners are really at the center to the reason why dual language immersion programs are created in order to build that practice of translanguaging in the classroom. And you'll notice that many of our schools are performing about higher than our district average. Now, last year we did make some new markers in terms of meeting some new goals. We were at a 10% reclassification rate district-wide last year. And this year we're on scope to meet 12%. So for this particular year, you'll notice that there's a handful of schools who are around or higher than our district average. I do want to reflect that there might be a question in terms of, well, what are some lower performing schools? I would want to highlight that our student population of English learners also fluctuates. So for example, if we dug deeper into these models, we will notice that a large portion of newcomers are more at one school than another as well. And remember that certain subgroup population will clearly affect your reclassification growth rate and also your LP and SBAC rates as well, because they're coming in with absolutely no English to practice on. Another big win for DLI Spanish models in particular, they do have a stronger system to support our newcomer students. Next slide, please. This is now the CASP or the SBAC. This is one of our district's ultimate goals, is to consistently improve. I believe it's 3% per year. And we can notice DLI specifically is relatively strong in terms of comparison, especially for English learners, which means our English learners are showing some major growth in those DLI schools, but also in comparative to our English only groups, specifically in science. We do lean on heavily on science in our DLI programming, just because it's a very unique space to use language in a very creative way. And yet we still do see some lagging in the ELA sector. And remember, DLI programs do take a little bit to get to that particular proficiency rate in English specifically. And in math, we're around the same ballpark, which means that while we're meeting these English only expectations, students are learning at that same time another language. Next slide, please. So the DLI program is a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 model. Now, the reason why I say in that way is because realistically, your DLI program should not be a separate program, right? So if it's part of your entire school, it follows all the trajectories as well. So it follows your tier 1 planning instruction, and then the tiers 2 and tier 3 models of that school would also continue and receive support in the similar way that other students do. An example of this is an English learner, right? An English learner receives ELD core instruction, same with DLI students. And then if they're having difficulties in that tier 1 instruction, they would receive further supports in tier 2 and tier 3. So it's, DLI program itself should be seen as part of the school program first, and then divided within all those 3 tiers. Next slide, please. One of the shining points of the DLI programs is the social emotional piece in terms of creating climate. I'm not sure if folks have visited school sites in terms of seeing a variety of cultures, but it includes not only Spanish and English, but it encompasses all cultures. The social emotional climate portion of assuring that cultures are accepted and embraced is pillar 4 of the DLI principles. So it is interweaved into the planning of DLI instruction. In order to do that, like I mentioned, it is part of the school-wide program, so it should be prepared for as its main focus. Next slide, please. Oh, I thought I had one more slide, but I guess I was wrong. Questions, I guess?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orozco. Does anyone in the committee have any questions? Okay, President, do you have any questions?
I don't know if I have questions, but I definitely have a comment. You know what? I have a question. Do we know, like, raw numbers, how many students participate in the one-way path, I know the whole school, that's just all the students, right? But when you're looking at the one-way path at some of our schools, how many kids actually participate in that versus taking the English only path versus taking the dual immersion path? Do we have those numbers?
I believe, and correct me if hopefully I'm answering your question correctly. On slide 26, those numbers are the students who are tagged as DLI official participants. So it's not just meaning an experience, which often schools do have, but that is not yet considered a DLI program. This means that they're in a DLI classroom or course that's specifically planning how much Spanish or English is presented into the classroom in order to practice and connect both languages. Um, Now, a number that's missing here, it would be a comparative of English only within those programs as well, right? So if I looked at Dover, I didn't include the English only uh, pathway in that school, for example. But these are the DLI students only. And if the English only portion, we can gather that data for you.
So the numbers that I'm looking at, for example, I don't know. Stewart has 2 students? Is that how I'm reading that?
So
Or
Stewart,
118? What's the one that has 2?
so so this is the uniqueness of this tagging. So students move, right? So we tagged them, we tagged them if they participated for more than 3 years. And however, students do move from schools. So this would also kind of demonstrate, without trying, students who are leaving programs, which, we have about 20 students, but a majority of folks are actually staying within the particular program. So that we really are trying to tag success of any DLI student in any program wherever you go, showing that particular success. That's why I also highlighted Helms, and this is kind of one of our new data pieces. Like, wow, we didn't know this before because we hadn't tagged students in this way. Is wow, there's actually a lot of DLI tagged students at Helms. Maybe we can tap into that particular resource. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I see Mr. Ortiz, you have questions?
Yes, I have two. The first one is around the seal of biliteracy. Do we also offer pathway awards or some, checkpoints along the way of seeing where students are on their pathway towards obtaining a seal of biliteracy? And then the second one was around professional development or curriculum in the upper elementary one-way DLI programs. One of the issues that I've heard when talking to folks within the DLI or upper elementary 4th or 6th grade is that they're really struggling to create, curriculum because we don't have the particular offerings that they could best support their students.
And I'll take the first question just because I might ask for clarification on the second. The first is that traditionally we have offered the pathway seal of biliteracy in grades 3 and 8. And then of course, students can receive the California State Seal upon graduation. This year, we're actually working on uh, 2 things. For elementary, we want to make it every grade level. We believe the 3 to 8 span is a little bit much. So we're working with our partners at the county to say what would make it a state seal for every single particular grade level. Um, and that would also make a clear trajectory in terms of proficiency using that marker. And then 2 is, and we've already got a thumbs up for this, is we want to also begin giving the California State Seal already approved by the state as early as junior year to be able to kind of build momentum versus students who are graduating often see this as like, oh, I made the dean's list, surprise. No, we want this to be a long-term goal because it does need to be planned with a counselor, and students need to know what courses to enroll, for example, or what assessments to take at the state or AP level in order to be able to receive this particular credit. So that's to respond to your first question. And then part 2, I believe it's really more of a curriculum question in terms of not our curriculum. And I would say most of our curriculum does not have a clear division of time allocation, right? So currently our district does not purchase a specific DLI curriculum. So we do set out a time allocation model with recommendations for teachers to use certain curriculums with certain specific language offerings in order to make that balance. Now, does it take planning to be able to input certain curriculums that offer that language allocation sequence? Yes. Do we offer that scope and sequence? Yes, we do. And then we understand that sometimes the curriculum that we do have, like any curriculum, not only DLI, can often be seen as outdated. So we'll try to look for, relevant material that makes learning more thrilling. One of the reasons why we really lean on that science curriculum is because it's relatively new. Students love science, and then it's also offered in multiple languages. So as we plan future curriculum adoptions, we have this vision of any new curriculum coming in would naturally already be part of the Spanish especially, and if possible, the Mandarin component. So we don't need to purchase new separate curriculum, because that would be another issue as well, right? Remember that whole sequence in terms of your program should be part of the school-wide program versus a program separate from your school program. Hopefully I answered. If I didn't, please let me know. And we're working on it. It is a struggle. I appreciate that, Mr. Ortiz.
Yeah, hi, so thank you for the presentation. I just had a couple of data clarifying questions. On slide 31, where you did the comparison of achievement and the DLI students, is that all of our DLI schools combined or just the two-way DLI schools who are meeting or exceeding standards on the CAS?
I believe these are only specifically for this one, the DLI students.
So would that be just Washington and West County Mandarin?
No, so only specifically the DLI students. I will say the caveat on that aspect is both English only DLI students and English learner DLI students. So for that one, it is not by school site. It is by student.
I need a little bit more clarification. I don't understand. Is it classroom by classroom or is it the whole school model?
So for this, so for example, English only would be all the English only students, English learner. So it doesn't matter the school. So this is the individual students. So an item that might help here is if I also put the number of students in the program that would match one of the slides that show the total number of DLI students. So this is not per school. This is if you're part of the DLI program. So that would include Washington school-wide and Downer Strand, right? And Chavez Strand transitional bilingual. So it includes all the DLI models combined, but it only includes a DLI student who's tagged in that particular model. So you have to be in that program.
Okay, I'll need to follow up later just to see the data of who that includes because I'm still not clear, but thank you for trying.
Okay.
And then the last one, the state seal of biliteracy. Do you know how many of our students are achieving that seal each year?
I do. Let's see if I can pull it up right now. I had it somewhere. Yes. Last year we had a total of 291 seal of biliteracy awardees. It is slightly down from 321 from the prior year. However, I do want to note that state criteria was changed in 2022. So some things were one of the wins is, and I don't have this item here, is that we are seeing more English learners receive the California State Seal, and in the past it was largely English only. So the state's criteria kind of balanced out for also an equitable lens to make it more fair for English learners to receive that criteria. One of the changes of the criteria, for example, is you don't need to be reclassified. You only need to receive a proficiency in a particular domain, like show high proficiency in a particular domain. So you don't need a level 4 overall. You just need a level 4 in a particular domain. So it's one of the places where we thought we were going to see a little bit more, and we actually ended up seeing a slight dip. Another reason why we believe we saw a slight dip is our high school DLI models kind of were reduced as well in terms of that trajectory. That would be an assumption, but it would make sense in terms of the planning of folks preparing to take assessments and willing to take that assessment.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just pause here to clarify, so if we could go to slide 26. So to kind of help understand this graphic a little bit better, if we look at back to the example of Stewart. So Stewart has a total of 379 students in the whole school, but they only have 118 students in the DLI program. So that's why they have 118 there. Comparatively, if we go all the way to the left, we see Coronado there with 104. So that's 104 students within the DLI program out of a total population of 319. And then Grant, for example, is one of our bigger schools in this mix with 550 total students, and 218 of them are DLI students.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ortiz, did you have another question? No, okay. I do have a couple questions, Mr. Orozco. So we have 3 different programs or models. I don't want to say programs, 3 models. How does a family choose or learn about the programs? So let's go a little more in depth. So let's say I am a new family enrolling in Montalban. Okay, a school that does not have one of these models. How would I learn about the programs and be able to enroll my child, for example?
So it is part of the any district-wide application. One. So there's a short description of these models. Now there's a slight change this year. So in the past, well, most recently, it's only been described in 2 ways, a 2-way and 1-way. Because the goal was to make all DLI programs either 2-way or 1-way. And I wanted to be very transparent today in terms of the reality of our programs. So you'll be able to see that particular difference. However, the programs are seen upon enrollment before you even go into the school. Now, I will say the next one is English learner specific, right? So when an English learner is identified as an English learner, then they receive an initial notification that goes a little bit more into depth of these programs and or if they like to transfer. Now, the reason why we give that item specifically for English learners is because, well, West County and Washington and Ford tend to be a little bit further away into the space and are usually looking for English learners families to meet their 33% quota in terms of balancing their language program, right? And then third, of course, is we can do still a lot better in terms of knowing these programs in depth. So in terms of knowing these programs in depth, that's where we really need to create partners with schools. And this is one of the portions, and this is maybe the slide I thought I had in terms of the community participation piece. So major success in the last 2 years is that there's been a development of an official DLI PAC. That DLI PAC is growing in members in terms of official delegates, and that allows for a higher space of communication. Now, one of the major recommendations of this DLI PAC was to update the DLI website. And currently in the last DLI PAC, that was one of the particular items is, well, what do you want to see in the website? Because there's things on the website already, but what would make you know a program in depth, and or what would be enough data for you to make that particular decision? So there's a lot of data. We don't want to overwhelm parents. We just want to make parents with enough information to make the right decision, or if they have more questions, know where to ask more information, right? I think one of the major steps was really, and this is with the parent communication, is be very accurate about your type of program. We understood the goal of creating 1-ways across the district, and without that fruition, it just became not accurate, right? So we're like, okay, let's just be very transparent about those programs so you can make it the best decision for your family. And if you're able and capable to go to another school where you might feel like you're getting a better support for whatever reason, because all these schools are, a lot of these schools are showing success, then you can, right? And that would be through the transfer process. But great question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to follow up on that. So you mentioned that an English language learner student's family will get further information if they are determined to be an EL student. When is that determined? Is it through the application when they click on speak a different language at home, or is it through the first year enrolled? How do we determine, at what point do we determine they are EL and we give them the information about the models?
Yeah, so it's within the first 30 days where we're required to identify them as an English learner. So sometimes they're already currently at a school. However, especially at kindergarten, when they're not enrolled, we do a lot of summer testing. So this would be, I guess, most seen when you're entering the school and we are able to test you in the summer where we can have that before you get to the school type of conversation. Once school begins and you're at a school site, we still give you that documentation because it's part of our natural documentation process in the initial notification process of programs. Because you also might be an English learner who's at a particular school site and you're not in the DLI model also, right? If you're part of a strand. So we say, look, there's two programs at your particular school. It's not only about moving schools, guess what? Your program actually has a school this DLI program, and it might benefit you as an English learner. That wouldn't be too late to move from one classroom to another, right? So the English learner, I would say program in general, there's a lot of movement, right? We're consistently placing students in and out of levels, and we are supposed to uniquely support every particular level in the moment of change. But where we support that specifically is when they're identified in the LPAC. That makes it state official. And in fact, an English learner can be tagged in like with another marker, as you'll often see TBD as that marker, but they're not English learners until they receive that result from the actual assessment, and that is within 30 days of enrollment.
Okay, thank you. My last question is for Dr. Moses. So in the sheet about the dual learning programs or models, it says it costs about 1.7 million. What's included in that?
That's a great question, and I should have brought my budgeting forms here. I can tell you that what that is the cost of the program titled DLI. I know that stipends for teachers are included in there. I also know that administrative costs are in there. So mostly that's departmental costs. It does not include any DLI teacher. It also does not include the impact of the DLI classrooms have a smaller class size, which means we need more teachers. So none of that is included because we assume there wouldn't be a change in the need for teachers. So this is just the cost associated with the program outside of the teaching staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Orozco. Yes.
Yeah, and if I could just follow up on two things, based on our conversation, I'm hearing that what we want is proficiency rates by DLI students in the model so that we can look at the different models that we have in the district and how achievement might impact that, because we bundle them all together and they're very different programs. So I can include that in a follow-up. And then also I'm thinking that it would be really helpful. So we have a lot of programs that are clustered. And so visually, I'm a visual person. I'd love to see a district map to see exactly where it is that we have offerings. Because oftentimes, for example, our programs like Stewart, they're trying to recruit people in. And that actually came from both that community and the DLI path, that they really want a resource from communications that highlights the differences and includes a visual map of where it is that families can find these programs. So I will work with my team on getting those two things.
Thank you.
Great.
I think like the third request would be, I think that we also need just some like very clear definitions of what each model looks like.
Yeah.
Like the two-way versus the one-way in PB, I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
For future presentation.
Yeah.
But thanks so much, Mr. Orozco. We can move on to the
Thank
next.
you, sir. Okay.
So thank you so much, Mr. Orozco. We are going to transition to our K-8 schools program. And Dr. Givens, our Executive Director of Area 1, is going to be presenting for us tonight.
Okay, so here's a little bit about the program. The K-8 school model is an educational structure where students from kinder all the way through 8th grade are housed in a single school environment. It's staffed much the same way at upper grades as our secondary is, areas of one. Some programs departmentalize, so at some schools, you might have math with this teacher, English language arts with a different teacher, so that happens sometimes. And some are keeping everybody in the same room, so it just depends on the school. At West County Mandarin, they are currently transitioning, so they only have K-7 and not APL. And so here's some of the four-year comparison. You can just see kind of how students are doing with their enrollment and their ADA. So we can just look at that. We see that in some schools, the numbers are falling down over time. Here's our current enrollment data for this year, 7th grade and then 8th grade. Go ahead and just look at those. Similar numbers, but you'll see that like it varies. There's more 8th graders. And then at Verdi, you see that there's a lot less 8th graders at their site. Next slide. And so we are using MTSS as our system of support for our K-8. And that supports them academically and behaviorally, and SEL needs are met across grade levels using data-driven interventions. Also include RTI for academics and EBIS for reading. So it offers a proactive and structured way to meet the needs of all the students. Because they have more time with the students over the course of the years than traditional elementaries do. They have longer to ensure that everyone is able to thrive. So I think we're gonna go ahead and show you the achievement data for all of the schools, starting with Mira Vista. And like many of our schools, you'll see that we need more support with math. There's growth across probably 7 to 8 years. Next. There's- And then- What you might notice about Bernie is that they are excelling in math. Kind of a different,
Point of clarification, the other scale was up to 40, this one's only up to 20. So it's not excelling, it's just a different scale.
Yeah.
I can't hear her.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I'll speak louder.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but it's like she's cutting in and out.
So we're gonna move to our next school. And that's Perry's. Also the 20 field. And then we'll move to the next school, Montalvan. Next slide, please. So social, emotional, and climate. The schools have unique characteristics where these families, these teachers, and these students develop long-term relationships that they're together longer than traditional school. So it fosters trust and collaboration across teachers, families, and students. Families are more likely to stay engaged in the school over time than if you would move them to a middle school. And they also have fewer transitions, so you're not having to move from school to school. And they equip them with the tools and the confidence and the mindset that they need to grow as learners and leaders. When our students feel empowered, they're more likely to engage in meaningful ways in their education. Right. And so here is the information about student wellness. And so as you see, they're doing better in areas where you'll see the blue. And as you go from yellow to orange, that's where there's more difficulty around those areas. And you'll notice that we are looking at the school connectedness, the peer-to-peer relationships. Those are places where we could probably grow in this.
Thank you. Does anyone from the committee have questions? I know the president and I have questions.
I'd just like to go back and see the numbers of the first few schools that had 40.
The Mayor Vista scale is at 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can just see the numbers.
The difference. Yeah.
Okay,
Next,
thank you. Is there another one?
this one's 60. This one's 20.
And when I was looking at that, I was talking about the difference between the math and the ELA. Yeah.
20, 25.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I see a lot of questions, so we'll start with Ms. Hatcher and then we'll go to Ms. Chamberlain.
Good evening. I have a couple of questions. One, is there some data to show how the students in the K-8 programs are performing academically when we compare those to the traditional elementary and middle schools? And are the differences significant in terms of test scores, GPA, attendance, et cetera? That would be one. And should I wait and let that be answered or ask all of them at the same time?
Ask all at the same time.
Okay. One of the things I heard Dr. Given say was that students having an opportunity to be at a school site longer would develop deeper relationships with the staff there. Outside of that last slide, I believe, and I don't even know what the definitions of each of those things mean. Like, what does academic behavior mean? So if I could get some, yeah. And so what does that look like in compared to other school sites? Again, going back to kind of the traditional elementary and or middle school model. I'm wondering, because this just shows the K-8 schools, it doesn't show the others. And I'm kind of wondering, is there a difference in schools that have been K-8 models for more than 10 years? I guess I'm thinking about Mira Vista and Stewart that were already K-8 versus Verde, Perry's, Montalvan. I think West County is a little different, but that became K-8s with like in the last 5-6 years. And I'll stop there for right now.
Yeah, I can take on those questions. So I think what's really important to highlight, so we didn't clarify, but obviously Stewart and Mira Vista were the two traditionally, historically existing. I don't have the date of when they became K-8s, but it's been a long time. Then we had a bundle that became K-8s when Superintendent Duffy was here. It was Verde, Montalvan, and Perry's, and very intentionally, those were transitioned in an effort to keep students and give them an opportunity to stay a little bit longer. To your question, and then obviously West County Mandarin is the last one. And interestingly enough, we talked about West County Mandarin both in all of the programs that we've talked about today with IB, with DLI, and with K-8. Every school that is a K-8 feeds into a different family. So it would be an interesting study to see exactly, right? Montalvan, for example, if we could go to slide 44, feeds into Pinole Middle School. If I pull up the 4th grade or the 7th grade data, for ELA, Pinole Middle School is performing at about 24%, and that is the exact performance of Montalvan for 7th graders. And then for mathematics, it's 18.75, and I believe that this is about 16, almost 17. So it's there is no difference in achievement right now when we look at Montalvan and Pinole Middle. I'd have to take a deeper study to look at the other K-8s, but I suspect that we're going to find similar data when we look at the performance of the traditional middle schools and the K-8s, that we're not seeing a significant difference in terms of the achievement difference.
So can I follow up with something?
Yes.
In some ways, West County, I don't feel like West County Mandarin should be part of that, because unlike the other site, West County Mandarin is comprised of folks who choose to go to West County Mandarin, as opposed to geographically being located, right? The kids who go to Verde are geographically, tagged to go to Verde. People from outside of that area are not necessarily going into Verde K-8. Same with Perry's, same with Montalvan. So in a lot of ways, the West County data it will skew upward, like the result. And I guess in the other piece, like, how does it compare? I think it's important to compare not just one year, but longitudinally. What does that look like? Because if for example, Montalvan is pulling kids from Pinole Middle, what is the benefit then of being at Montalvan versus being at Pinole Middle if actually kids are performing exactly the same way? So that's just something like to consider. I just want to put that out there. Okay, but thank you for answering.
Of course, and I actually think you're elevating a lot of really important things. And what's important here is this is a family choice, right? So some families do choose to take their students to Pinole Middle School. They're not, forced to go into the K-8 model. Some families transfer in because they want that intimate space. We've seen some students go to Pinole Middle and then come back. And so it's important to note that there are family choices that are because of the program that they want. There's also some challenges. We're sending students, for example, at Verde, who have a single subject or multiple subject teacher in 8th grade teaching all subjects suddenly to secondary. And there's a lot of skills that they need to learn about planning with multiple adults, the responsibility of, seeing different expectations in different spaces. And so a challenge that K-8 leaders have faced is, how do we create a semblance of a middle school program in this smaller space so that our students aren't having to be challenged when they get to secondary school? We want to set them up to be successful, and that is definitely an area of growth to consider as we think about the K-8 models. And it's absolutely impacting our traditional middle schools, right? So as we've seen Montalvan keep students, that's impacted Pinole Middle School and the offerings that they can have. Same is true at Helms. We've seen that enrollment decline because we're pulling Perry students and Verde students who are now keeping those students. And so it does limit what our traditional middle schools are able to do.
Thank you for that. Ms. Chamberlain?
So I'm curious in this slide, this wellness slide, what does school connectedness mean, considering it's got 2 separate numbers on here and two different it's on here twice. No understanding there. Academic behavior, school safety. What is this compared to? What do the numbers mean underneath? Is this Verde is 162 students? 151. I mean, why does it say 56 students at Betty Reed? I'm not clear on what those numbers are. Is it a comparison number? I really would like a little more definition on what this means here. Also going backwards, Verde and Montalvan use the elementary model, not a traditional, what Mira Vista and Stewart and Perry's use as a middle school model. So we're apples and oranges on academics here. So that kind of makes me wonder how this is being compared. And as classified, how is this compared to a regular? How are those school sites staffed to make sure that those students for safety and for the work and behavior being pushed forward? And are there as many special education opportunities students should be involved in these programs, especially at West County Mandarin and these K-8 schools, as there are at our regular middle schools?
Thank you for those questions. I'll start with the Kelvin screener. So this is definitely Ms. Sigler's wheelhouse, as a climate team is under her, but I'll speak to it for now. So each one of these indicators has a set of questions that students respond to that come up with the scoring of whether you feel like you have strong peer-to-peer relationships or school connectedness. I'm assuming the reason why school connectedness is listed twice is because there's a different set of questions. So I can't speak to the nuance between those two, but what Dr. Gibbons described is really what we're looking for is colors that indicate that students are feeling a sense of belonging and that they're feeling that they're supported by teachers and have a strong academic sense of belonging that's supporting their safety there. We can there we go. Summer Sigler says that she can get the full text of questions that students responded to be able to get those scores.
Okay, it's funny that I want to go back to one thing you just said was connectedness to teachers. Are these fully staffed schools? These additional 5 K8, these K8s, they fully staffed in middle school level?
I can speak from experience that it's been really tough to staff middle school at a K-8 model because for example, when you're running a program as a middle school student at Verde, you're literally teaching all the subject and you're not getting an additional prep time. You're getting the same allocation of minutes. When we were trying to, for example, at Montalvan recruit middle school teachers, they're like, what do you mean I don't get a 50-minute prep every single day? I'm like, no, sorry, you get 20 minutes prep times 5. So the difference in the models really make a difference. And we do have 3 schools that have a secondary model and 2 that do not. Currently, West County Mandarin, because they're not fully a K-8 yet, they're still in transition. I can't speak to exactly how they're running their model, but I can certainly speak to the fact that the students you had a question about special education and what offerings are there. Montalvan and Verde both have a learning center model, and so students who have RSP services continue to stay there. And I would say, based on my experience at Montalvan, we saw most of our students with IEPs continue to stay in that K-8 model and then transition into high school. I can't think of a single student with an IEP that moved out, and we saw many students with IEPs transfer in because they were choosing that smaller setting that can oftentimes, transitioning for 2 years is tough.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, because I'm not an educator. I'm having a difficult time following what the ask is based on the presentation. And just based on this here, what I'm hearing, just piggybacking off Kim. So this was a survey that was completed by students at each K through A, right? Is that, because I'm on Zoom, so I can't really.
schools, actually. It's a tool that we use from our climate department to get a pulse on how students are feeling in terms of their school safety at school. And so this is kind of what we do throughout the year. And we also have the California Healthy Kids Survey that is an annual measure as well.
Okay, so so for example, let me just kind of simplify. So for my understanding, at Verde, overall 60 students completed this survey out of the full enrollment, or is it a certain grade that completes the survey to get the data?
I don't know if Ms. Sigler can unmute to maybe explain a little bit.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So the Kelvin screener is given multiple times during the school year. It is given in the fall and again in the spring. And it's really designed to give actionable data for school sites to plan and to get granular enough that they can intervene if an individual student is showing signs of being in crisis. So we use it both. You can see these broad questions that we use to get a pulse check on where the school is at. And then it's also used to support services for individual schools. So I just logged into Clever to look at the questions around connectedness. The first set of connectedness questions, just going back to Kim's question, is I feel like I belong in my classroom and I have at least one friend in this school. And then I'm going to click out and try to find the next set of questions, and I can put those in the chat as well. It'll take me a minute to find it. Did that answer your question?
No, it did not.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. Yeah. I was wondering, for the example, Verde, 60 students completed this particular survey, and what grades are completing this survey to get the data? I'm just trying to figure out how you collect the data.
Yeah.
I mean, is it
absolutely?
Yeah.
So we have.
Let me follow up with the team about the grade span, and I'm going to dig a little bit more in Clever to see if I can find the exact answer to your question.
And I can tell you that there are 42 seventh graders at Verde and 24 eighth graders. So together 66 students. And so it looks like it is just the middle school student data. So 60 kids with 6 that didn't complete it. So this data is just the 7th and 8th graders.
That's what, okay. That's what I was wondering.
Okay, well, thank you so, sorry, okay, the president has a couple of questions.
So my question is, when we just talked about, 3 different programs in West County Boundary and kind of like floated through all 3 programs. But when we're talking about K-8, why aren't we talking about virtual school inside of that K-8?
I can answer that. Virtual school is the next program presentation, and virtual school is K-12.
Okay, so because it's K-12, it's a different, separate beast on its own.
And it's K-12 independent study, so it's a special program. It doesn't follow a traditional school model like these
So it
other
doesn't float
K-8s.
inside of it, it's its own kind of thing. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you so much. I'm complete.
Shall we learn more about that program?
Yes, let's move on, but just before we move on, I did wanna just summarize some of the asks.
Yeah.
I would love to see this data with just like in comparison to other middle schools. Would love to see that as well. I mean, you kind of spoke about it because of the.
With our feeder school.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be great. Okay, we can move to the next one. Thank you.
You want to vote say Shane?
We don't need to.
So we just have to stay here.
I trust that Mr. De Leon is going to, value economy of language in his presentation. So let's talk about Vista Virtual.
Well, Mr. Virtual, it's K through 12. They work on individual academic plans for every student on campus. The students do synchronous classes. It is elementary and secondary, so they have two charges that they're doing. And they meet students once a week. And the classes can also be combined with this time. Next one. In the next slide, you can look at the enrollment for the past 4 years. And it, like I said, K-12, so you can have a chance to peruse it. There is some, right after COVID, it was very high. Now it's about half the size. Next slide. So this is just for this school year. You can see the demographic breakdown. Again, their expected graduating class is about 38 students. Next one. All right, achievements. So once again, so this is to help students and their parents and their guardians to work together to come up with one plan for the student to succeed. Elementary is a different plan, secondary is a different plan because they have different focuses. The teachers assess each student to see what is the best way they can build a curriculum. So each student gets individualized curriculum. So the teachers throughout the program assess the student's strengths and the student's weaknesses. So therefore they can ensure that they're meeting the academic standards of the students. For secondary, the classes that they offer are A through G, so they can go to a four-year university if they meet the university requirements. Also, they do a regular high school offering, and they can actually do classes at Contra Costa College as needed if they need credit recovery. And the important thing about the Vista virtual is that they do combine with the Vista land in case they need some kind of math lab or English lab. Next one, please. The data for them, it's a very small group of data. But it's not as great as the testing. Remember that when they do the testing for it, it's only 11th grade, maybe some are 12, so you're looking at the data for 18 to 30 students. Next. Again, SBAC results, the class between 18 to 30 students. So this is their achievements. Next. If I'm going too fast. As far as supporting students, they do have regular school teams. Cost is very important. They need as students need it. The important thing is as they're assessing the students' weaknesses and strengths, they can more easily be referred to the intervention that they need. RSP staff, they're running 3 special education teachers for a total of 33 students to support them through their voyage at different grade levels. And again, they do the IEPs and they do their classes very similar to an IEP, what the student needs. Secondary, they do have a high school counselor person, so if they're looking for careers, they're looking to go to a university or vocational, they do have a counselor on campus. Next. So for emotional, the team did build a SEL class to support the students social emotional, because the part is, high school years, middle school years are really important for development. They're missing that social skill building part. So they did build this positive relationship program on campus. They are working towards something called Learning for Coach Certificate Program. I am not that familiar with it, so I'll stay on it. But like I said, they do have a chance to come in person to the Vista land in order to get more personalized work. Additionally, they do have an SPSA, an APAC, an ELAC if the numbers justify, and they do meet regularly as needed. Questions? See, I went fast. Not that I want to go home.
Why don't we start with Ms. Chamberlain?
So my curiosity, communication, since they do lack social skills, is it's having to push in their communication in getting, as the other K-8 models were just shown, that is something that they achieve, connectedness. How is that working for that school? Does this counselor also work with the middle school students to find the best pathway for them to go into the high school programs that the district offers rather than staying virtual, so that they might be able to feel a connectedness and belonging with other students and moving forward in their future socially and emotionally? And how are they doing really academically compared to others? What opportunities are they missing? Are they able to participate with a virtual school in the athletics programs or the other? I mean, I'm sure there's like something beyond athletics, other programs that they have at their traditional high schools that they may like, is there a chess club? Is there leadership? How are they going forward with all of those programs also in virtual?
So by the teacher meeting with the students at least once a week, taking their social emotional need of the student. The teachers themselves took upon themselves and created different activities for the students to participate in. They have created different clubs that the students can come in person. As far as 7th and 8th grade, that's a good question. I don't know how the counselor interacts with the 7th and 8th graders. I will find out for that. But if you look at the numbers on the enrollment, it looks like 7th and 8th grade is around 20 to 16 students, and when they hit 9th grade, it's about 22. So it looks like the students continue on. Usually the students that go to Vista usually try to stay Vista all the way through. As far as sports for the students, and then students are part of actually of the Vista High School model. They are eligible to play any sport that corresponds to their address. So they have access to the high school sports whenever, if they choose to go try out, etc. Vista in Middle College has that access only. Did I hit everything, the Chamberlain?
What about, you're saying that so this is a combination, not just the virtual program, you're talking Vista High School also, the Vista program. So we're not talking just virtual program here. You're including the Vista school also.
Not in these numbers here, it's only the Vista, but as a school code, they are under the high school model. So they are eligible to take the virtual classes and do the activities at the high schools.
Okay, okay.
So that was kind of weird because they actually have two different school codes. But for CDC, it's only one school code. So at the end of the day, all the reports come together at a CDC, not two separate scores. So
Yeah,
even
it's a program I can put my hat on for a second. It's a program, and when virtual came into play, when we had originally put the model together as a school in itself, and then we had to move forward because they no longer were allowing it when we ended up going into COVID times. They took that opportunity away from our students. So yes. So
Yeah, and I
okay,
think it's, I
thank
could
you.
just add, I think, one of the things that you talked about are, we can address the standards and the content that needs to be taught. And we also learn other things in school. So particularly when I think about our kindergarten, first, second grade students that are enrolled there, there's a lot of things you learn in school about collaboration and getting along with others. And so the program has been intentional about creating those social clubs that, Mr. De Leon talked about, and that is a challenge and a worry that we have about preparing students to do these collaboration expectations. And these are programs that our families are choosing for very intentional reasons. So I think they take that into account when they choose these programs.
Thank
So
you.
can I ask then, I'm sorry to keep, but So how is their attendance then when these programs are in person rather than virtually? How are they participating, and is that being tracked appropriately beyond the regular ADA attendance portion for students? How many of them are actually coming in and participating during those times of in person?
That's a great data point that I'm have to go and research. I will look that up.
Dr. Ramos, if you had a question.
Just a clarifying question on data. I noticed the California dashboard, the grad rates was red. Can you elaborate on that? Why are they in the red for graduation rates?
It has to do with two things. For a high school, the graduation rate is actually begins in 9th grade. So if you started at Richmond High in 9th grade, and for some reason you didn't finish at Richmond High in 9th grade, it does not help the graduation rate. Now, if they graduate someplace else, the credit will go to Richmond High, not to Vista, because where they started in 9th grade. That's really, it's an interesting, because that means that if a student started in 9th grade at Vista, how many students stayed for 4 years at the virtual school?
Got it. So their decline in enrollment is impacting their calculation for grad rates. Got it. Thank you.
Or if they finish someplace else, it might help.
And then we're gonna go Ms. Thatcher and then Ms. Thatcher.
Thank you. I just want to ask the question. I heard CAO Akasa Bapraskis say that there are families that are intentionally choosing the virtual environment for their student for any number of reasons. I am wondering, what does that look like for special education students? I noticed that that was not necessarily a demographic or data that was included. So are special education students being allowed into Vista Virtual, as that might meet some of the needs of our SPED students in terms of environment, like smaller classroom environment, more individualized attention? So that was something that wasn't included. So I'm wondering what is that number for Vista Virtual?
So there's 31 RSP students at Vista Virtual that span all the grade levels. For some reason, there's 3 MMSN students that I think their IEPs are going to be changed to RSP. So out of the 224 students this year, 33 are special education under RSP because they need to function independently to complete their work. The advantage there is that they get like a double IEP. There's the whatever they needed for the learning disability, plus the teacher in charge of the class also does a specialized schedule to make sure the students can succeed in assessing their strengths and their areas of growth at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
So I'm wondering, Leo, does this program pay for itself with the ADA that we have now? Because I'm just looking, you know, the trajectory is going down precipitously.
Well, look that way. So that's a great question for Dr. Moses and Ms. Kim Chamberlain. Because if you were to ask, there are 14 teachers assigned to 224.
And that's not including those 3 SPED teachers. So 17 when you include the SPED teachers.
I think the answer is no.
And but their class sizes are at 22:1 for their schedule. They're not scheduled at the 36. They're scheduled at 22.
12.
I believe all special programs, I believe the number is 26 for special programs. Is it 22? There is a separate class size max for a special program, and in our district, Vista Virtual, Vista Land, and Greenwood Academy are the 3 special programs we run. So they do have smaller class sizes than our other traditional school models.
Now what research is
Yeah.
It is that size.
I could elaborate a little bit on how those teachers are used. What Principal McCormick has created is pretty well a block schedule for all students K to 12. So they're each getting different specific courses. So they're not assigned, you know, a student in first grade might not be assigned to just one teacher. So her model is very different. But I agree that there are a lot of FTE assigned for a small program such as this.
So just to clarify,
Mhm.
there are 2 kindergarten students. Are we assigning a kindergarten teacher full-time?
So the,
Example?
if you look at their master schedule, Kim's gonna train me on the UI, but the classes are mixed. And since they're making individual programs, they can mix them.
So they're like a large combo. For lack of better words, okay.
Or individual meetings with teachers. There's any number of ways that it could be set up. The interesting thing about this program is these teachers are all classified as K-12. So any teacher you hire can teach any subject, kindergarten through 12. And so it's really a unique way of staffing and way of creating a master schedule. But we do know that early learners need specialized teachers who can teach the early subjects, just like secondary students need specialized teachers that can teach the secondary subjects. So what has been created is very unique and different, doesn't look like any of our other schools. And students are being served in a more personalized environment.
So does each teacher have a caseload of 22 students?
Kim Chamberlain, I will leave that one to you.
No, they do not. I'm not going further without that. Yeah, that's not, no.
Chamberlain, would you be able to tell me the average caseload per teacher?
Give me. Pulling it up.
Yeah.
The difficulty is you're talking 2 separate sites at this point. So you wanting just virtual students, correct?
Just virtual, please.
And while Kim is looking that up, I'll say, because we've talked about the attendance, that's why I don't mean to put you on the spot, Kim. But students are being combined, Vista LAN and Vista Virtual, which wasn't the original intent and isn't the intent for ADA either. So it's been a little difficult. If I might just speak a little bit about it, Kim, because I hear your hesitation. It's been a little difficult to sort through ADA because you've got students who are in 2 distinctly different programs, but are combined for the purposes of instruction. And we're trying to figure out how to correct that. Did I cover it well, Kim?
Yeah, you did. So one of the things that you have to understand is they co-teach most of their subject areas. So for the most part, it would appear when you're looking at the master schedule for a teacher that the maximum load is 20 at the very most. We have one teacher with 23. The rest of them are all less than 20, 15 to 20 is their maximum load for caseloads. So, but a lot of them do co-teach. Your middle school is a challenge since there are so few there. So that is another area, but yes. And they are subject to scrutiny with our auditing purposes, just so we're all aware of that the auditors look further into these programs to make sure we're in compliance and that we're following rules and regulations a little more than other areas that we might be looking at in our district for ADA collection purposes, so that they make sure that these students are actually there and that their I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So it makes a big difference. But Edith has made a very good program. It's just getting the students to come back into it, which I think she's also made a very good program to working at students moving back into the real world. And that's what I would hope for in a student. They would get back in there and be socially and emotionally stronger after having COVID times and those challenges.
And I really appreciate you elevating that because I think it's important to note that Vista students are also some of our most vulnerable students, and so there's a reason why we keep those numbers a bit smaller, right? It's a special program for a reason, so I think it is great work that's happening there, and it is very different, and we're all still in the learning process of trying to figure out this program that has been created there, because it is working, and we want to see the numbers increase, but we also want to keep them small, because that's what makes us special, to serve that very specific population of you know, some of whom are very vulnerable students in our community and could really only be served there. Any other questions about this program?
Yeah, the president has a question, but before we move on, I think that like I struggle with that because virtual was not intended to be a program that supports our most vulnerable students.
Correct.
Only land, which already existed, right? When we created the school,
Yeah.
it was just supposed to be another program to hopefully increase enrollment, support those families that didn't feel comfortable going to school in person. So if the program is changing, I think that has to be a bigger discussion, because I think that the board, I mean, I can't speak for the whole board, but I was under the impression that we're talking about two separate schools, that it's been changed. I think that that's a different discussion. Well, it's not in the purview of this committee, but I think that it's concerning to hear that. But anyway, not here nor there. Why don't we move to the question from the president?
How many total students go to Vista Virtual? Okay, 224. When you're looking at the 224 students that go to just virtual, not including 7 through 12 that may go to land, because land only works with 7 to 12, right? So.
Land has 107.
Has 107 kids that go there. Okay, so that answers my
go
question.
back?
The other question is, when we're looking at their attendance, the way I understood it is virtual gets their attendance not by logging on, but if by turning in their work. So they get work, and if they turn in that work, that means that they were there. Not like it used to be when we were all in virtual, and it's like, you click on, that's how we take your attendance. Am I accurate in understanding that that's how their ADA or their attendance is done, is if they turn in the work, not if they?
It's like independent study.
So that's where the independent study model part of it comes in, is if they turn in the work, and then they get the school gets the credit, or the kids get the credit, or whatever.
And the teachers making sure that the work that is given is a grade level standard.
Grade level and standard-based work, okay.
Especially in the high school, because they have if they're A through G and they're gonna go from Vista to a four-year university, they have to meet the A through G.
When they get their diploma, does it say Vista Virtual versus Vista Land, or does it just say Vista?
I think their diploma say alternative education. I don't think
So it
so.
says like our continuation school?
Yes, it's all ed.
It's all ed, it would say all ed, okay.
Unless there's, I think it's all ed, I didn't see it.
I don't have to look it up. I'll write that down
Yeah,
there.
we'll double check it, but
I believe it says Vista High School, but I'll double
It's
check.
like Vista. I guess that's where I get a little confusing because, or I get a little confused.
Just
I think-
Vista High School.
All right, just Vista High School.
Yeah, because it is an accredited school also.
Vista High School is.
Yes.
And when they go through the Ross accreditation, are they going as Vista Virtual or are they going as Vista High?
Vista High, virtual is a program within that school. So their diploma would say high school, Vista High School.
So Land Vista, you have Land Vista that
Yes.
service little model says K or says 7 through 12. And under Land Vista, you have Virtual Vista as a program under Land Vista?
Yes. So, okay, let me put it like this, so maybe it'll help. Ms. Smith Folds. So you know how Greenwood is a school in itself, and we had Gateway, the program that was part of it. And that was a program which no longer exists, but that was a program that was part of, so it isn't a full it doesn't have to go through the accreditation separately. It goes right with Vista. Vista holds everything.
The confusing part is that in Power School, it looks like they're two separate schools, but they all are under the umbrella of this.
Okay,
Well, so is transition, technically.
transitions under Vista too,
Mhm,
Landis. Okay,
mhm.
but transition is a program under.
Yes, yes.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Good
Sounds complete.
job.
Yeah, try, okay, let me give you one better than that, just to make you even more confused. Try doing that, reporting all of this to the state and differentiating that all. So
Yeah.
that makes it even challenging. So it's great.
Yeah. I love it.
I'm sure Mr. Mansing understands me completely right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it just highlights for us like how complicated this all is, right? To try to understand. And I know that the conversation existed pre-COVID about a virtual program, and obviously because of COVID grew in demand. And so we saw a big spike for need, and now we're kind of seeing that level out. And so I think it is important to really note the difference and to talk about, what should it look moving forward? So unless there's any other questions, we can move.
I do, sorry, last
No, that's
question
okay, don't be
is
sorry.
the money wise.
Yeah.
2.5, what does that pay for?
Oh,
2.5 million.
So the way in which I ran this report to find out how much this program costs is I looked by site. There are separate sites. Vista Virtual has a separate site from Vista Land. So when I looked at Vista Virtual sites, the cost of that entire budget for that site is 2.5 million. However, just like everything else, things are like special ed's not in there. There are some things that are not in there. And so I need to do a deeper dive to say exactly what the costs are, but that is a ballpark figure of what the program costs without the extra support from SPED and Vista Land.
That's just the teachers and.
Yeah, but I actually think I would say that's just the teachers and the admin. And a little bit, I remember now, $11,000 in materials and supplies, and the rest is all staff.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador Vasquez. We can move on.
okay, so thank you, Mr. De Leon. So we can transition now to the purpose-based budgeting tool.
Let me do a time check. I know we're over, so I want to know how much time I have. And the goal of today is to use this tool to rate the 4 programs based upon what you heard. I think it's better to do it while it's fresh. I don't think it'll take very long, but I want to respect everybody's time and ask Clerk Gonzalez-Hoy how to proceed.
Okay, so just to clarify, you wanted us to actually fill out each sheet for each program.
Yeah, and I can walk you through it really quickly, and it can also be done virtual. It could be done on a Google form that I added to the calendar invite for the committee members, because it's only our intention, I think, to get the information from the committee. So we could also review the rating tool and then have folks to fill it out online. But I printed copies thinking the people inside of the building might just want to do it on paper. But there's a virtual option as a Google form as well. Well, one caveat, if you use a Google form, you do have to record your email address, because we do have to make sure that the information is coming from the committee members only.
Right,
Yeah.
right, that makes sense. Well, I would say we should do it online by ourselves, but when I send labor our doodle, some of them never responded, so. I'm just kidding, I'm giving them a hard time. It's late, so I would say, why don't we do it for homework? But if you
Okay.
could explain to us the tool and what we should be doing, I
Absolutely.
think that'd be really helpful, and we can present the outcome of all the feedback at the next budget meeting.
Yeah.
But I will ask the committee to fill them out in the next 48 hours.
Okay. And it's clearer on the Google form, so that might help you. Okay.
Oh, so don't do it on a little piece of paper?
The Google form is just the questions, and so I think it's a little easier to give a rating. Okay, so really quickly, what we're looking at now is the slide of our district priorities, and these priorities were used to create the purpose-based budgeting tool. I believe we've reviewed this twice, or maybe just once, but this is our directly aligned to our strategic plan and our graduate profile. what we aim to do. And these areas of priority were used in the budget, in the purpose-based budgeting tool for weighting criterias. If you look at the bottom of this area where there are 6 strategies of how we're going to accomplish the mission of our strategic plan. And one is aligning the district budget with the plan. Second is retaining and attracting staff. The third is including parents and staff. And the fourth is increasing student access to MTSS, which is our response to intervention. And the fifth is increasing intervention programs for students that we've identified as being below basic performance. And then the last is to foster inclusive environments, which includes our work on anti-racism and inclusivity and inclusion of our SPED students. So we use those areas and we created, there's also this piece that you'll be able to review. All of the programs you saw tonight, they had to fill out a Google form answering the questions that you see on the priorities, the priorities tool. So we'll have that available. There'll be a link for that as well. But this is what the tool looks like. And this is an actual example from the dual language immersion model, which was the second one you heard tonight. And you'll see that the top area of the form is actually our weighting system. We looked at these together and how these areas align with the strategic plan and gave them weights. When you rate them, it will take into account the rates and it'll give us a score for each program that we can come back and talk about. So the bottom area where it says evaluator, weighting criteria and evaluator, if we were doing this in person, we would just pass forms around and have people to enter the amount. Then I would put it in a spreadsheet and it would calculate numbers for us. We don't have that capability since most of us are virtual. So I created a Google form and the Google form goes over the 7 criterias that we just reviewed. And you'll answer for 1 per program. You'll just answer the 7 questions and give them a weight of 1 to 5 scaling. If you look at the very bottom, it shows you how actually it's 0 to 5 with a rating of 0, meaning it does not contribute at all to our strategic planning and our mission and vision. 1 is it slightly contributes, 2, it contributes some, 3, moderate contribution, 4, good contribution, and 5, excellent contribution. So your Google form will list those 5 options for each program for the 7 questions. So it's 28 questions total when you consider all 4 programs. And we'd just like you to use the information you heard tonight in order to give you the background information to be able to rate. You certainly don't want anybody to provide a rating if you don't feel like you have enough information or you're not comfortable doing it. So it is okay to skip one, and we'll figure out a process for how to deal with that if you choose to skip an area. Okay.
We are going to only do 1 per group. So for example, UTR, there's a couple folks here. If you all could get together and decide together on 1, that'd be really helpful. Just so that, because there's some labor groups that only have 1 person, that way everybody has equal voice. Yeah, okay, we'll figure that out. Any questions from anyone in the committee about the forms or what we have to do?
Before questions, one more clarifying. On your calendar invite, there's a link that says meeting documents, and there's about 7 lines. The bottom line is the form. All of the other lines are all of the papers that you received tonight. So if you want to refer back to the form and the weighting, you can do that. So it's a 1-pager with 7 links, with the bottom one being the link to the form. Okay.
Okay.
And then we can add this additional link so that you can refer back both to the presentation and just to the responses, the same one for each program.
That'd be great. And then if we could also add the presentation to the agenda, that'd be great.
And it is on the calendar invite, the presentation.
Okay, Mr. Ortiz has his hand up. Mr. Ortiz, go ahead.
Thank you. One question that I have regarding the purpose-based budgeting, is this the direction of the board, or what was the decision-making process around this particular course of action for tonight's meeting?
I can answer that. It's not necessarily a course of action, Francisco, as much as the committee trying to collect information about what the collective group values based upon your ratings in order to feed conversations for decisions that have to be made in the future. So this isn't a deciding tool, it's a data collection tool to inform future decisions by the board. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, well, did someone else have a question?
I'm sorry, I did, Demetrio, if you don't mind. It's actually a question for Kim. If we had additional questions, Kim, beyond the evaluation tool, how would we push that forward? Since we have a little bit of time, Demetrio saying, you know, is saying these things will be completed within the next 48 hours. If anybody's like me, I keep processing, right? And so I may have some additional questions. Is it possible, I don't know, to add that to the evaluation form, or do you want them emailed to you? Like, what would be the best way to get those questions to you? And thank you again, Drew. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I appreciate it.
That's okay. Yeah, I would say if it's a question regarding the tool itself or the budget, email me. If it's a question regarding the program, email CAO over Proscus Acosta. Did I say it the wrong way? Acosta Procasas. I'm sorry. Yeah, so, and then also because my emails are not kind of out of control, can you also text me to tell me to find your email? And that goes for, I think everybody has my phone number, so if I don't respond to you in 24 hours, find me.
And
Sorry.
what I'll do is I have a list of data commitments that I made that I'm gonna try to work to turn around very quickly. So most of these are pretty doable pretty quickly. So if I can get those attached, I will.
Okay.
Thank you,
Great.
that'd be great. Okay, and then just the reason why we have to do the turnaround is because most likely we're gonna have to have a budget meeting right after Thanksgiving break. Just because the timelines are so short. So that's why we need the data so quickly. And then we'll present the outcome of the data at the next meeting. For conversations. Any last questions or comments from the committee? Dr. Moses.
I just wondered, I believe we covered all the programs that were asked about. I know there was an ask to look into SPED. We can do that, but I'm not sure we'll find cuts there immediately. Are there any other programs that we want to use this tool to evaluate? And it doesn't have to be answered now, but I just want to make sure that if there are any other programs in question, that we use the same process to gather the same data. Not in question, but curiosities about other programs. Yeah.
Good question. Does anyone have any programs they want to bring up now?
Good, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for staying so late. We will figure out the date for our next meeting. And then our next meeting, we're also going to, are we gonna discuss the first interim now, right?
The first interim won't be presented until the December 18th meeting. I could bring you likely preliminary data to we have a meeting scheduled on the 17th, so you can get it a day before. I don't know if that's appropriate, but I could touch on it a little bit if you'd like.
17th.
On the 17th. That's our next scheduled budget committee meeting, but I understand from your previous comment that we'll have one more before that, and that's okay too. We'll see where we are.
Okay, well, then we can discuss about 17th. I think it would be fine for us to do that,
Okay.
but it'll be up, I think the president can make that decision. Okay. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Any last comments before we end the meeting? Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll adjourn us at 8. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.
Who asked about paper?
Well, I think I will be in the office tomorrow.